This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey, Noah here. In this video, I'll be creating a brand new farming system for my open world game Chef RPG. A lot of famous restaurants around the world grow their own ingredients to have the best and freshest selection possible, so I think it makes a lot of sense to give players the option to grow their own ingredients. Now, before jumping too far into developing any system, it's important to think about how this new game feature would impact the existing game. What kind of effect would a farming system have on a cooking/restaurant management game? The obvious benefit of such a system is that players would be able to have another method of acquiring ingredients to sustain their growing restaurant. On one hand, I could create a massive plot of land where you can grow your crops without limits, like in Stardew Valley. However, that would become a major gameplay time sink, and since this is a game about restaurants, I think it's best to avoid that route. We don't want this game to become a full-blown farming game. The other option is to contain the farming within a smaller space, like a greenhouse. This way, you can only grow a limited amount of ingredients, so you really have to think about which crops to grow in order to support your restaurant menu. I think this second option makes more sense for Chef RPG. Players won't be growing ingredients just to sell in stores. Under this limited farm space, players will be incentivized to focus on growing ingredients to use in dishes rather than selling them. So let's get started. One of the main characters in the game, April, already has a greenhouse nearby your restaurant. We can just have her lend you the greenhouse to use at some point in the game. Maybe if you unlock a skill or if you become friends with her. The second step is to draw the greenhouse interior. There isn't really much room for design here since we want to match the interior to the exterior. However, when it comes to designing the growing area, there are a few options. This is one of the cases where the aesthetics of the scene has an impact on the gameplay. My first idea was having a set of planters where you would grow the veggies you want. Although this would certainly contain the farming gameplay, I feel this takes away any room to decorate and design this space. One of the great things about games like Stardew Valley and older games like Restaurant City and Habbo Hotel is your ability to decorate spaces to be fully unique. These games use a large open world grid system that lets you build with minimal limits. So let's remove these planter grids and just make this entire scene plantable and buildable. Since we're in a greenhouse, I think it might make sense if all of the soil is ready to use, so you don't need to till it to get it ready. I suppose it's just another design decision to make the farming aspect of the game quicker. I'm just drawing one big patch of soil in the greenhouse so we can start planting right away. Now that the base map is ready, there are a few things we will need to get our farming system up and running. One of the things we will for sure need is seeds. We will also need some plant objects that have different stages so we can see their growth over time. I quickly realized that the most time-consuming aspect of creating a farming system is drawing all the plants and rigging their animations. Each plant has multiple phases, and each phase would ideally have different animations when you tap them or harvest them. On top of that, if I ever want visual variations of the same plant, since repeating identical plants breaks the immersion a bit, that would multiply the workload again. So definitely a lot of work ahead. For now, let's make a couple plants to get the system working. Here we can see all the potential seeds that could end up in the game. Since adding so many new seed items into the game could create a lot of inventory clutter, I thought it would be a good idea to have a seed box in the greenhouse. Instead of carrying all your seeds around or filling up your valuable storage space, you'll be able to conveniently store all your seeds in the greenhouses. Within these seeds, some seeds will grow into trees and some will grow into small plants. Because of this, the amount of space that each plant will take up will be different. If a potato plant takes up 1 square, an orange tree should take up a lot more, else it would look pretty weird. So I decided to create 3 plant categories: single square plants, which disappear after 1 harvest, and larger bushes and trees which you can repeatedly harvest over time. For example, if we have an orange tree, the tree wouldn't just disappear after you pick the oranges. Now let's create a way to convert these seeds in your inventory into plants that grow in a greenhouse. I'll have to construct a script that allows me to select a seed in my inventory and plant it in the ground. Since there's already a small consumable panel down here for food, I thought it'd be interesting to allow seeds to be placed here as well. Instead of eating it, if you press the corresponding button, the script creates a seed object that follows your mouse around. By hovering the mouse around the scene, the rectangle should turn green if we can plant the seed, and red if we cannot. I added some extra code for if you're standing too far away from your target, you will be unable to place the seed. I think it's useful if we can see the bounds of a plant, so I created this dirt boundary around every seed to help players be more organized. The alternative will be that you will have randomly scattered seeds around the ground and it'll be hard to tell which is a tree and which is a regular plant. Now that the seeds are on the ground, I want to add the ability to water the plants. Since the game has a tool system where you can right click to equip and unequip the tool you wish to use, we can create a water can under the same system. Thankfully, the character animations for watering plants have been made already, so I just had to create some new water can sprites and match their animations to the characters. During the pouring animations, we will need to see some water hit the ground. I also gave the dirt some water droplets that fade away after a few seconds for added effect. Before jumping ahead, I want to take a minute to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for hosting and building websites. They have a ton of great templates that you can choose from, and I recently used Squarespace to create a website for Chef RPG. What surprised me was the amount of customization available, and you can mix and match different templates to create pages suited to your needs. Squarespace lets you insert short videos, so I put one right at the front page, which looks pretty cool. They have a great automated image scaling system, so I never have to worry about if images or videos are cropped incorrectly. Scrolling down, we have a system for collecting emails, which can be linked to Squarespace's emailing system if you ever need to send out important updates. They also have great portfolio tools that automatically adjust the layouts, which allowed me to create a screenshots page where you can click and enlarge individual images. It's definitely a useful platform for artists and designers looking to create an online portfolio, or game developers looking to make a website for their game. If you're interested, check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/pixelarchitect to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now back to the video. Here, I'm adding a UI bar that shows you how much water you have, which pops up every time you equip the can. Using the same system as seed placement, the water can follows your mouse and searches for planted seeds. When it hits a dry seed patch, the tracker turns blue and you can water it. I thought it'd be interesting if different plant types require different amounts of water, with trees requiring the most water. Now, we will also need a way to refill this can. Again, to keep things simple, let's put the water source inside the greenhouse. We will need to carve out some additional space here on the left, or else things are getting a little too squished. And I don't want to take up any more planting space. I think a small tub with a faucet could work here. Now, if we equip the can and walk inside the collider of the tub, a little icon will appear, and if we interact with the tub, the water will be refilled. Next, we'll need the plants to grow over time. This is another big design decision for the farming system. On one hand, I could have the plants count the growth cycle per hour. For example, after you water the plants, it takes 12 hours to move the plant to the next cycle and the water will dry out. I tried this at first, but quickly realized that this system becomes overcomplicated and hard to understand. I don't really want players to go into the greenhouse every few hours to check if the water has dried, which makes it less fun. I think the water once a day system done by previous farming games is the best solution. You water it once and don't need to think about it again that day. When you come back the next day, there's an exciting feeling before opening the scene, since you might see that some plants have grown without needing to keep track of individual plants and remembering if they've been watered or not. The classic system is nice and simple to implement and easy for players to understand. Here, I'm adding an extra UI that tells the growth progress of the plant and the ingredient that's being grown. In the final game, this might be a feature that you unlock with a skill. Like, you could become a farming expert and be able to immediately gauge the growth progress of the plant, but for now, it helps make development and debugging easier since it can tell me if the crops are progressing. We've implemented all the features required to plant and grow seeds, but at this point, I realized there was one more thing missing. Trees and bushes are permanent plants that don't expire, but what if we want to get rid of them to grow new plants? In most farming games, crops are grown outdoors and seasonal changes remove the crops of the previous season. Since we're indoors inside a greenhouse, that wouldn't really apply. Instead, if we want to remove plants, we'll need the player to do it manually. At this point, I realized that we need one more tool to help remove the plants. Taking a page out of RuneScape's farming system, a spade tool would work here. You clear the plant by digging up its roots, so let's add a spade tool into the game. Since we don't have any digging animations for characters, we'll need to make use of what we already have. It might be possible to just reuse one of the existing animations. The scythe swing with the tool flipped seems to work the best out of the existing animations. The arm movements are basically the same. Let's draw some spade sprites that match these character sprites. After the tool animations are rigged, we should add some dust and dirt particles to go along with the digging animation to make it look more convincing. Again, using the same system as the water can tool when equipping the spade, a target appears that follows the mouse. When we hover over a crop that can be dug up, the target lights up and we can start digging. After a few swings, the patch disappears. So obviously, that's a bit anticlimactic. I think it would be cool if digging up plants actually rewards you with something. You can get seeds of course, but maybe we can reward players with plant roots as well. Since we recently created a crafting system to make the brewing appliances, plant roots could be a possible crafting material for various items. For this, I created a new item class called Raw Materials. We can definitely add more items to this category in the future. Maybe when exploring caves or mountains, you'll be able to collect some rare raw materials. We can then give these materials to certain characters to craft special items. Now when we dig, some roots or seeds pop out of the ground depending on the growth phase of the plant. So visually, it looks a lot better and gives players some feedback for completing the digging action. On top of that, you get a small reward for clearing crops that would have otherwise generated ingredients. To finish off, I think the greenhouse doesn't look as good as it could be at the moment. If we start planting crops close to the edge, everything becomes really close to the wall. So I want to do one final visual fix here. Let's add a border pathway around the planting area. That way, it kind of frames the crop in the middle and connects these two walkable islands. And there's a separation between the crops and the walls. And if the crops ever get too dense in the middle, you can always follow the walkways so your character won't get stuck. Now it looks a lot better. The aesthetics feel more uniform and the walkway is looking pretty good. We can fully decorate the farm with furniture as well to make it look livelier. So that's about it. There's definitely more room to develop the farming system a bit more. I might find an artist to redraw some of these plants in the future and maybe do some better animations. Gameplay wise, games like Stardew Valley have fertilizers to improve the growth of the plant and sprinklers to automatically water plants. Let me know if you have any suggestions on what can be added to a farming system that is part of a cooking RPG. There's still a few more things missing in the game at the moment. I still need to redesign the skill system and also add recipe research and enhancement so your chef can specialize in certain foods. I want to add the ability to customize your dishes, turning regular dishes into something more unique. After that, it's full steam ahead into doing stories and quests and finishing up the second city. I'm aware that as we get closer to the finish line, I'll probably need to reveal less and less about the game to avoid spoiling things. So as we move into the final stretch of development, I'll need to figure out a way to do videos without revealing too much. It's always exciting for game developers to work on things in the dark, waiting for the day where we have a big reveal. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed seeing how a farming system is implemented. Thanks for watching and see you next time.